What happened in Bangalore is terrible. Regardless of how offended you are, burning people's houses down should never be on your to do list on any day of the week. Now, religious tensions are flying high, and I don't want to fan the flame. Muslim youths indulged in violence, and the youths that did have to be punished. However, all of this has got me thinking about secularism, and because I don't trust the people on either side of this argument, I am going to talk about Turkey and not India, specifically the Hagia Sophia, a church turned mosque, turned museum, turned mosque again. This building has had more of an identity crisis than a middle aged man from rural Haryana that just realized that consent is a thing. Wait, really? I need to ask her. Oh, I just thought I could. So that means I'm the bad guy in this story? Shit. The Hagia Sophia is a big, beautiful building in Turkey, a country whose population is 98% Muslim. As if a month and a half ago it was a museum, but then it suddenly changed to a mosque. To know why, here's a quick history lesson. Wait, we didn't do the thing. Oh yes, like, share, comment, follow us on Instagram and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you're watching this video on IGTV, the link to the channel is on our bio. Now, on to the history lesson. 537 CE, the Hagia Sophia was completed as a church under Byzantine Emperor Justinian I. It was a really important church. In 1453, or about 900 years later, Emperor Mehmed II defeated the Byzantines and he changed the Hagia Sophia into a mosque. Over the next few centuries, the Ottoman Empire would be known as the flag bearer of Islam, and its ruler will be called the Khalifa. But over time, the Ottoman Empire weakened. In 1923, a few years after the First World War, the Republic of Turkey was established by Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, a benevolent dictator. He was extremely secular. In 1935, as icing on the cake, he converted the Hagia Sophia into a museum because it was obvious to him that the middle ground between a church and a mosque was a museum, and this did not sit well with a lot of Muslims. However, time passed, and in 1938, after Ataturk died, he left the army in charge of upholding secularism in the country. So whenever an elected government went slightly away from secularism, the army staged coups in 1960, 1971, 1980, and 1997. In 2003, a certain Mr. Erdogan became the Prime Minister and he did a lot of good. He served for 3 terms until 2014 when he ran for the nominal post of President, because one person can serve only 3 terms as a Prime Minister. He won the presidential election, but this is when he started getting really insecure. In 2016, he detained 40,000 people and fired 160,000 people for showing even the slightest form of dissent, even liking memes. This is called the purge. He then banked on appeasing religious Turks to hold on to power. And now the army thought now's a good time to perform a coup. And it did try to perform a coup, but sadly, for the first time in history, it failed. In 2017, Erdogan held and won a referendum that abolished the position of the Prime Minister and gave him, the President, a heck of a lot of power. Opposition cried foul because the margin of victory was very, very slim, and there seemed to have been some shady business. In 2018, he became president again. Opposition cried foul again. And for all practical purposes, he was now a dictator. But by now, the economy was in a free fall and he had to do something to hold on to power. So in 2020, Erdogan finally came through. He turned the Hagia Sophia into a mosque and appeased his voter base. Now that the history lesson is out of the way, let's look at some analysis. What is secularism? Let's look at what the founder of the Turkish Republic thought of it, Mustafa Kemal Ataturk. The dude was like me from like 4 years ago. I was fed up with how much religion and politics were fused together. 15-year-old me genuinely fantasized about being a secular dictator in this country and like restricting all religion. something I'm particularly proud of. I mean, Ataturk didn't gun people down. He was a nice guy. He did nice things. He gave women equal rights, he banned polygamy, but the problem was he wanted to follow French secularism, and this meant the complete separation of church and state. He banned burqas for government officials and shut down Islamic schools in a country with 98% Muslims. That's insane. Imagine doing that in India. 15% Muslims. Even Amit Shah would say, bro, chill, it's okay. Let them wear their burqas, no, please? After Ataturk, the sheer need for the opposite of secularism meant that a lot of Islamist parties came to power in Turkey. This can be seen as the basis for two-party politics. This is why Trump came to power after Obama, Modi came to power after Manmohan Singh, and the biggest disappointment in the history of the world, Brandon Stark after Cersei Lannister. Anyway, this sentiment against secularism lasted several decades because the army kept performing coups and overthrowing the government. Now, Erdogan took clear advantage of this, and now he's a dictator. The Hagia Sophia is one more such gimmick to retain power. Now, secularism is tricky territory. Even in a very secular America, over half of its voters want their president to be religious. That's kind of why you find Trump doing stupid shit like this sometimes. I'm pretty sure that lifting that Bible is the closest Trump has ever gotten to fitness training. Now, the thing is, if all of us find him funny, who's he doing it for? And that's the problem. We don't consider other viewpoints. Whichever side we're on, we're correct. And that's the saddest way to deal with all the viewpoints that you're exposed to. It's like going to a buffet with your mouth taped. Secularism in France has its own problems. They call their form of secularism laïcité. Now, I don't know if I pronounced that right, and frankly, I don't care. French is hard. Anyway, the politicians in the far right portray themselves as saviors of secularism. Imagine that happening in India. Politicians in the far right portraying themselves as saviors of secularism. That's an interesting prospect. These far right politicians want to impose the very vague laïcité very strictly onto Muslim immigrants in France. These politicians are known to be very particular about not liking religious symbols like the hijab. Well, now we know that secularism isn't just a child of the left. Secularism is nuanced. So are political opinions. This was all just an exercise to tell you that shit's complicated. You are entitled to your own political opinion. So be open to mine. And when religious tensions are high, we, the citizens of the internet, have to be careful to not post provocative stuff and make things worse. Cheers.